welcome. It's been a long time. I'm admitting it now. Please step down and leave it the way it is. Right. But it's just getting that feeling again to just be speaking to the audience. It's the only conclusion, as well as end of the broadcast with another Forza Horizon 4 broadcast. Sure, I did something that, simulcasted it, but given, in a sense, I would have been just much more comfortable just to stick with, just leaving it on the one channel like before. Still, I may say anything in these situations. I mean, there still is a huge issue that still gets into my head every once in a while. The matter, with data centers and stuff. Enough to get anyone going absolutely mental. I mean, to most working class and lower class folk. Even on the other folks who are rich. Just don't want it. Many patterns are emerging. It's feeling evident, at least in my mind. A few matters that's revealing itself at the least. Anyway, just checking if I'm getting it all running just the way it should. Situations like these can sometimes just become straight silence and you can't hear a thing. The dude's used to the game and stuck already knowing about most of the rules. And what you can and cannot do in all these other situations. Can get artificial, but there are cases it can be, just to be very clear, difficult to agree on the evolution of artificial intelligence of recent, at least in the mind. I was reading as well in the matter of the approaching actual 0 day stuff relating to the 0 day clock and all that. The advancements in artificial intelligence, the way it's shrank in terms of exploits and stuff it finds through, the different programs and systems. Even so, still Senshiu sticks with what he does know. I assure you it isn't straightforward. Nor would you assume that being here is easy. Not that it's easy grinding, for example, Call of Duty games or Counter-Strike 2 or anything in the FPS circle. I haven't completely thrown Valorant away either, Just coming very clear about this situation. Though most of my activity is on Twitch these days, in those rare circumstances I will still stream on both YT and Twitch in a simulcast. If I feel that inclination, I will do so. Sticking to 120 FPS with many broadcasts, not all, but most. So ones like Cocoon of recent, which in checking the settings in it, there's this decision running it up to right up to 2160p, 4K, and the YouTube broadcast, and at 1080p 60 on the Twitch broadcast, as one example, and a few broadcasts through May of 2026 as well, to where it was running 1440p 60 on YT and at 120 FPS, usually 720p 120 FPS through the Twitch service. Even now, every once in a while, where I can see other 120 FPS broadcasters anyway. Although it just isn't as straight, as clear, the circumstance. Searching for 120 FPS streamers, usually see them in Russian, not really through in other languages. Still check here and there, which users can and are able to broadcast at the rate. True, and I get the fact for many they just don't care, or aren't aware about running at 120. Stay with either 60 or, for example, 48 or 50. Or anything above 60 frames per second. Then other situations. Still old school in relation of streaming arts and stuff. You should remember as well, I am able to broadcast at 240 FPS as well. It isn't only 120. Stand by. Just for a bit. Nope. In this circumstance tonight, I don't really see any that I would consider running at 120 FPS, so I will just abandon that. I do have multiple other broadcasts that I'm checking. Sure. Did have my doubts about FH6. True, for now I won't be getting into it because of, well, the price of the actual game. It's a little over 100 Australian dollars. 70 or was it 80 US? Wouldn't really know. I don't live in that part of the world. Even so. Just jump in only with the prices is different. If it has generative AI textures, so be it. Doesn't falter that much of what would be a great game in its own way. True. The feeling where there should have been more roads in the game. Yes, there are some complaints and that stuff. Yeah, and the unfair CPU AI or whatever. Still, it can still be hooked into it and that. There's more to it than just to get focused on that. I mean, there's also 007 First Light. Seen enough to know that it's not exactly my scene, I guess you may say. An actual actor for 007 still hasn't come yet officially in the, films. Thus, not to say, no, well, this is a curious venture, but I think others just want to have a more action-focused 007 game than much more espionage-focused, spy-focused. Espionage-focused, spy-focused, project. I'm aware who developed it, okay? So I don't have to notice. I've come clean about this situation now because it's not really worth playing, at least not in my head. The truth also was, of course, it's been an unusually long duration. 13 years or about that. I feel it's the polarizing type of game where there may be some that do love that experience and feels fresh in the head. Then others, yep, it's what they feared. There's been more what you call spying and not enough action. Then it just does seem it's built for a different audience, in my opinion, anyway. Funny enough, I'm still watching Bunny Garden 2 broadcasts. It's tough not to be aroused when they have an intense blush in their faces. But the matter, though, they're only, scripted characters, you may say, to be fair. You really can tell straight up the difference in the intensity of the blush in their faces, for example. You think I focus on such an obvious part of the body? Nope. It doesn't go, that way that you may think. Or others probably think. You had the term guilty pleasure. In a sense, that's what it is. Maybe check this again, okay? Utilizing the pitch VST. It's not called pitch, it's called pitch proof. For free, you can collect. Yeah, whatever. Stay with what works. Had been another game that had also come out. Was surprised of how GPU and CPU intensive, more GPU intensive. Was running on Unreal Engine 5, if I were guessing. But Hollow Royale, whatever. Hollow Royal, just Hollow Royal, as it's known. Yes, it isn't the only free game that came out of Hollow Indie last month, and as I say, May 2026. Right. Still, probably has been a slide in stuff that's happened. It can fluctuate, you know, it's just happens much more naturally than you may think. Times that you feel comfortable to stream, and then there's others you'd rather just watch instead of stream yourself, you know. It's tougher than it actually feels when it does come an awareness of confidence in streaming. This isn't exactly something simple. If you just get the feeling, you just go for it. There's others who are forced to schedules. Not me, though. It's how, you know, it runs as usually as anything goes. Sometimes fixed to one game. Sure, maybe growing a little older as well. I'm getting a bit sick of these comparisons. But it's who I am. It isn't some low life who is just only imitating to know. To run through the motions. Where you don't feel like there's any excitement unless you just jump somewhere else. This isn't always about going from trend to trend to trend to trend. No, it isn't like that. The cases to stay true is sometimes not so straightforward either. It's a different age compared to where it was just about a year and a half, 2 years ago. And in the past month or 2 months, or maybe even 3. The continued developments through these forms of artificial intelligence is one other factor. It's causing great unease in the head. In what Basis explains to you folks. Easy to just continue to maintain naivety in some of these cases, but sometimes it's important learning, I feel, why the matters are controversial more than you may think. You've been real staunch from from pretty early on, actually. Notice this sometime after Hawkeye. Is recognizing at the points where I felt Hawkeye became Hawkeye. It continues. Much of it is irreversible. Yeah. Even so, still stand right down here, knowing that there is a real fraction, small group that do find my work, well, above some other players anyway. I'm different as well. I don't have that common thinking like most of the ordinary people. Some that just stand and do their own thing. Well, what doesn't affect me that much? The circumstances to when classes begin jeering and booing. Some real high-profile tech moguls and CEOs and so on. It's effectively, metaphorically speaking, to give those elitists the boot. Another sign explaining that they're not welcome. Their type are not welcome and all that. And it's the same situation happening in many local areas in USA as well. You know, the counties and cities and so on. And remained very clear to the stance for not allowing those companies to build data centers and maintain when they already know the damage that actually happens. Some of it behind the scenes, actually. The stuff that's publicly documented. Real clear. Particularly in the amount of electricity and water and supply through other energy types and so on. Indeed, it isn't simple enough when no means no, and for some of those other leaders of those counties and municipalities and so on, that they change the course and allow it to the detriment and agony in more ways than you think. The residents and so on, and this is a story reminiscent to hydraulic fracturing, also known as fracking. Relatively similar, but not straight parallels to each other. Only a few. True, even I get mad. Yet it's almost a lost cause nowadays. Particularly when it feels like the decision's concrete. Real clear. Though, I might have reduced the input in playing FPS games, the ones I stick and find comfort with. It's not just that either. Given the greater difficulty in standing out isn't into the FOMO stuff. Sometimes, if you read the signs enough, it's better to without the FOMO effect. Expecting exactly what sometimes comes in some of these games that come out. It doesn't matter either about if they have a staunch stance against AI. If they can't stand out, well, that's their fault. Too many are like this now. Or it's a feeling in my head, anyway. It's the one game, of all games I've had run of recent years, is still the Spectre Divide experience, at least to me. Something which I'll never let go of. Or never feels like it anyway. A sensation that felt real different from other experiences in the tactical FPS genre, but that's at least in the way that I think. Still can remember, still will remember anyway, sure had issues of optimization, particularly in pushing at doing 4K broadcasting on YouTube. Not long before it launched, or at least then anyway. I'll also be honest. Particularly recently. If little to nothing else really was tickling me fancy at the time, I'll just run any of those elite players playing Apex Legends. Perhaps more than any other competitive shooter out there. And just watch Predators, and even, like, for example, high-level Diamond players or master level players, to sit and watch them. Yeah, CS2 esports stuff too. It isn't too far away from EWC 2026. That's still some distance away, but yeah, much of the stuff which has been mentioned is in the road to EWC anyway. Just then figure where else to mention. So, this is important that I share this next subject. It speaks in behalf of both myself and 12, so I'll get on very clearly about this. Still in a real small city. It's technically more a remote area than it used to be anyway. Sure, it's developed a little more in past years, but the family are in the big city. The ones between both, well, within the family at least. 12 is currently living with his mother, but it's the best case scenario at the moment. Once the 2026 year is done, then yes, through both 12 and his mother, traveling to the big city to support the other members of the family. One of the siblings is a mother as well, and it's important still to just be with other members. Sure, 12's the rather quiet type of player, though he sometimes wants to contribute somewhere. On top of that, just recently his vehicle had had something broken, and is unable to lock the vehicle. But I won't go no further. Let's put it bluntly. The vehicle that he's had since he was 18, for 15 years. The specific part, which was actually broken, had been in the front door for when you lock and unlock the vehicle. That was busted in the trip just earlier on this week anyway. Thus, it's compromised, I'll say it that way. Anyway, in whatever case now, it's a risk. And in whatever case, of the driving and stuff. I mean, just to refocus back. Another subject. It's not exactly gonna garner much attention, I know. But just to move on. Still wouldn't just drop the attention. But what I do is my business. I did have enough to talk about those other subjects. But I'll stay with the tried and true. It isn't as easy as it had been before, but because of the different complications that have happened recently. Some companies who focus on gaming and have more focused on AI and all that stuff. To be more specific, in a few of the companies, they emphasize the evolution of artificial intelligence technologies by harvesting in different ways and leaving gamers and some other enthusiasts feeling ripped off, you may say. And thus components become expensive. And we're first-hand to that. Before this, it's a situation when thinking in hindsight and retrospect. Did make the right move to getting new tech, building a fifth PC. There's other PCs just been terminated, I'll say it that way. Legacies sometimes can just make it really clear. Still a big deal to know where your accomplishments in different times were. Started the project back in 2011. Something which I'm still proud, even though now I've been a solitary individual for, through all that time. Developments may not be as simple. There's very few other obstacles in the track now. It's become something I'll describe as mundane and not very fun. It's at least how I feel, given the situation. The feelings in 2025, much of it felt rather sharp. Even still, it's where the other controversies began, particularly through other forms of AI, with the forms of AI that's crept in gaming circles, in projects, the layoffs that have been going on for a few years now. This impact as well, I've also noticed, of some attention-seeking scum, for lack of a better word, being the new heroes of the streaming spaces. While memberships increase, The only way to enjoy watching broadcasts, either on YouTube or on Twitch or any other service, is basically subscribe monthly to YouTube Premium or on Twitch Turbo or the other Twitch affiliation or something. That's what I'm sticking with. That doesn't mean that much of the content is just plain lowbrow stuff. Sure, great talents can still be here and there. That's if you dig deep. And the ones you can remember, you can dig. Well, more than you... At least make the attempt. You can see some other great experienced and, but sometimes unknowns, and others who are quite well known. It's finding the lines which players just maintain a consistent track record. But it's preferential and it comes to individual tastes more than anything. That isn't then to say that it's pointless. With your own research, it still matters sometimes. To come relatively clear. If you feel it's easy to claim to be getting along with me, you're free to listen. I'm a dude who has had over 10 years of streaming experience, from the days of using Xbox One console and a Microsoft Surface 3, or Surface Pro 3 or whatever, back in 2016, and bought the first capture card I used to be streaming right up to 1080p 60 at the time, using an Elgato HD60S back then. Still have it stored in the garage. Stuff I'd consider obsolete given technological advancements, both in console tech and in PC tech. It does so happen sometimes of solutions I find to myself. I mean, it's something I've known for months. From mid-2024, in fact. Just tried it again, but I didn't calibrate it properly, the stream for Forza Horizon 4 this time. But if I wanted to do tests in advance, I would. But that's up to me, not anyone else. Yep. Capable, to run right up to 4K, although it's gonna be upscaled. In the case of its 120 FPS, then it's forced to stay at 1440p. You go higher and then an encoder breaks. The stutter. Therefore, It stays at 1440p. Excuse me, 1440p 120. It can be upscaled up to 4K if you know how to tune, for example, the bit rate of the content. While using a second streaming program in running the broadcast for, at, say, that's, for example, 720p 120 or at 1080p 60. And push it right up, well, at least in my instance, and pushing it right up to 8 megabits per second. Normally in VBR, but then I use hardware encoding. I'm aware about the difference between software and hardware in X264 and the NVENC. Did more than enough experiments in knowing the quality differences. Nevertheless, such conversations, I know, I say it's few and far between these days. The notes, too, they're being fixed into, for example, other sports. Well, in 12's instance, he's a fan of Australian rules football, or at least AFL. And it's a tough sport. Even now, even with all the different rules throughout the years, it's brutal, and I mean, not always, but can be brutal. Did lose interest, for example, experience such as in Formula One and in cricket, for example. Though, this season at least about Formula One, I mean, did take a bit more direct interest. This isn't just only the Red Bull Racing team that have been dominating. There's a few... It's evened out, you could say. Different manufacturers, constructors. Isn't that one-horse race like it used to be. It's coming from knowing very little to nothing about 2025 season, so... to be free to quote me, then I would check, but... wouldn't really do so. Excuse me. There's still had been a few surprises which have come recent. Stand by just for a bit. If you excuse me. There wasn't really too much else unfolding, and just checking. Stuff that's up. Sure, there's not very many actual Counter-Strike 2 esports stuff on, so still something to check. 4 grand finals, take your pick. It's not some in-joke. At the time of broadcasting, there actually were. In 4 different tournaments with grand finals. Kick out. Summer kick only, I was about to say. But this... Yeah, I will just say nothing. I mean, I've stopped watching too much HLTV. But it's easy becoming even more fixed. These times no one joke. Unless, of course, the players themselves been, well, accustomed to the change for a while. Where it's not clips instead of numbers. You know, the bullet count. Shells still are the same. Between the 2 versions. The ones that are magazine clips, it's different. Yep. Like in the old times when we played the old Rainbow Six games, it was... You reload, well, technically, I think you still have bullets still in a clip. In a magazine, but... So keep it very simple. Well, you drop a whole clip to reload, instead of the old days of topping off. The way that it had been before. But there's no point to go any further. I mean, that's how it is these days. Sure, but what precisely will happen given there's questions still open-ended in terms of the future of Call of Duty? To be quite honest, even I don't think there's much of a future. It just seems like it's been siphoned, and he's given a massive cash cow what it's already been fed in whatever case. And when it deviates too far from where it was, it turns into some different beast. It's one that's too unpredictable and it's too unstable, basically. If I need to keep this straight, as clear as I can, there've been a few too many such changes. But that's at least on the take that I've been... Well... Just to come clear, the dude actually had been introduced to Call of Duty series, or franchise or whatever, and the 4th iteration in 2007. Stopped really supporting it from 2020, and the time when that Call of Duty Black Ops Cold War came out. But if I come clear about the situation now, that's still... At some degree, to some degree, yeah, can still be followed. To run the older ones, but that's at least based on the individual's preference. And the current situation of just running other games, just ridiculous. To remain as active as he could, the situation isn't that simple either. Yep, and was then to say, yeah, things indeed can get ever, well, really depressing, in fairness. In fact, since February, that there's that impact, just, you're feeling that you can't win with these well, those with the CEOs and other high-ups, big tech and all that. Sometimes there's a sense of it's consuming past habits or preservation of the internet. The feeling the bots nowadays have harvested the stuff where some stuff was great and worth preserving, although, unfortunately, in some cases, it's gone and can never be restored. Or if there was somebody who's kept a copy, they can upload it and just keeping those fantasies and or legacies alive. It isn't to be thrown away so easily. I think I'm a little bit like you, if I'm gonna be honest. I've been sick of AI slop for so long. You wouldn't even know how bad it really did get. And don't forget all those swarms that have been coming through. Even so, I still stand here, and being aware. Where I'm aware what the risks are. Still, there are more. Real world impacts. In other words, feels to me it's rewriting history. Explaining this happened, but it didn't happen that way. And you're forgetting all the effort. How much effort was poured in arranging some of those groundbreaking projects. One such, of course, is what happened about that infamous, no, not infamous, that one well-known Apple ad. Depiction of 1984, you know the one. Reenacted as well, of course, on Fortnite as well, if others remember. Yeah. You can't forget that the balance not only has been shifting against the course of humanity, and they don't really feel like they give a give any big bang about humanity just being an afterthought. Build the killers and then where to from there? They do have their shelters if they see things become so out of control, really, that it's basically a lost cause, of course, to just try to gain control of the systems. We're at a point, I feel, where it's as important to read about what development's actually happening. I'm aware of one very dangerous such version of Anthropixis' Claude as well. Yeah. Can be quite if you think of it, it is cataclysmic. Albeit, it wouldn't feel like it at first, but it will really hit. You know. It's at least the claims. That's the way I've read, anyway. It's fine. Too many are just weak-willed. Or uninformed, not educated enough to what's actually really going on. But in my opinion, and I want to flabberlim this thing, okay? So I'll come clear. Already seen multiple industries already going KY. This... True. Certain things artificial intelligence can never be superior to. In such circumstances, still staying in control of your project is as important as anything. It's... could, and I won't lie, become an overwhelming feeling when the clones start to take over. There are lines that can be too blurry. In such cases, it isn't as straightforward. This... Well, then come clear about what you are and what they ain't. And what they claim they are as well. Each once in a while, even I keep saying in my head, just keep it real. To know this isn't exactly easy. You can't deny it. It feels a bit like if you follow, you need to be sure that you are staying informed with the situations going on. One day, all smooth sailing. The next day or the day after that, where things could be very messy. We'll still need some backup, just in case things just get very messy. But it isn't that simple anymore, is it? You seen what happened about the fuel crisis? That happened around the globe. Trust me, even I didn't see it fully come. Had the case where, well, the Strait of Hormuz, and you see what happened there, and then the helium crisis as well, and that's a real problem. And the other kids who... They're getting their hands on new technology they cannot comprehend very well. They call it... AI in your hand, really? Do whatever you will. Don't forget the bad actors. They exist too. More ways they can mess up. Destroy or cause chaos. Cyber warfare, well, it'll really grow as bad as big weeds will. It's the frustrating realities. You wouldn't want to rub right down there at the very first sight of a chatbot telling it to jack in. Then you know what? They become therapists, but they do it sometimes in such egregious and inappropriate manners of activity. The grooming stuff. There's uncomfortable truths into that. Sometimes I have to be wiser here and just not to mention it, but it does exist. Isn't that simple? Particularly if you're searching for authenticity. Many backstabbers exist as well. But ones who can find authority. There's some who come clear about what they are. It's not as easy to just jump into the fray. Don't jump too close to the fire if you've not felt how hot it was. Too many children are doing exactly that, I'm afraid. And the effect, where they're overwhelmed with technology. Not to say it's all such evil. You seen some such tech? They wouldn't all learn that way. It's starting at that level anyway. But it comes right back to the ages where it was the real push. The advancements of 16-bit graphics and further. The way that technology evolved. The way. Those tricks come to become something greater than the sum of their parts. Yeah, then the new frontier, as they say, in 3D tech, mid-1990s onward. Contrary to opinions of today, it really was straight up state of the art way back in the 1990s. You shouldn't forget, virtual avatars didn't exist until the 2010s, at least the way I remember. They did have other virtual entities that existed. Basically NPCs. In the days, yeah. Since there were three major console companies. In the times where they had their own approaches in handling 3D technology. Where, for consoles, I think the PlayStation and the Saturn, affine texture, mapping and all that. Affine angle. The other was, and the one with the Nintendo 64 was, if I correctly remember, that had the Z. The Z angle. The true Z angle instead of an affine Z angle. As that's one of those examples, and the differences on the controllers of the times. The dual analog, dual shock controller, or whatever. It wasn't what was introduced in the PlayStation. That was a little later down the road. Second, critical point to make here. These days, I know the tech inside of most of these consoles, excuse me, which is similar. I mean, when the two generations that came and went, which are very similar tech-wise. Yeah, then in the past, when I recall, sharing 12's memories, not my own. I was born in '08. Anyway, that's in those in the moments of when experiences felt unique, but not the same type of uniqueness between now and back then. Why? Because the digital society between this era and that era was so fundamentally different. It isn't as you may suppose. But that doesn't mean everything in digital technology was great either. Some analog stuff does what digital stuff can't back then. It's a different swing these days, but you still need some familiarity with analog tech, or you'll fall further behind the order. Still, sure, we've come a long way, yes, I know that, but is a certain discomfort, I feel, that had been happening for a while, although I haven't openly admitted that feeling. It's a strange. It's some other strange feeling. It feels invisible, though I know that I actually can feel that its impacts have larger range effect. Such circumstances, through further disinterest of many of the newer projects, you'll always have such games that may be done with completely human teams and so on. It does not mean it's technically a great project. You still have junk created by, human teams, in fairness, and I won't lie about that. Risk, in a way, shifting or dilapidating. More companies play it risk-averse these days. It isn't some joke. Cash cow has to continue to grow somewhere. In more places than you may think. Still, it's what it is. Do still, keep up here and keep up on some of the newer products. Does question exactly what some of them are thinking, really. And some are questionable, such choices too. But this is just how it is. You wouldn't be dishonest to say what has been going on through, for example, NTE, and a few other games which have done the same strategic move, but to its detriment, claiming all its work was all done for human developers and created all by human hands. But then, when it comes out, they lie and then point out AI-generated content is around. See, that's what's just starting to really unfold. When they'll find a middle ground, I would like to know when, but I don't know. I don't really think it'll be this month, next month, or the month after, but somewhere near the end of the year. That's my feeling. It could happen in August or in September or October. Whatever the case, though, I've noticed that there had been those feelings. And with layoffs and the matter about the stuff AI does well and what AI systems don't do well and all that. As I said before, it's important to still research and remain informed about it. This isn't something very easy to read. Because, well, there's points where, as individuals, have to just check the light and then find out what really comes around. Sure, complaints come and complaints go and all that. They're placed as the new leaders of a new world, basically. Technocracy. It's a lot of dumb. It's just a joke, really. Though they don't think so. Just the burning holes on wallets and all that, and then, well, you have a right to argue. I still am of the opinion the gamble won't pay off long term. Look at all the effects that's already been going on now. Considering just the amount of energy and water has been consumed, and that AI arms race stuff. Yeah, it's getting way too personal. That's the feeling, anyway. They're broken records that are just trying to look for the right players that can run and fix and whatever. More run and fix. Mending and fixing broken records, yeah, like that's it's just the feeling about AI tech. Still is my take anyway. Yeah, it's what I'd say it's somewhere in late 2024. And some of the video games have begun that shift where they see some advantages with AI technology or generative AI or whatever. To to enhance the experience instead of to replace such other experiences, right? Though, I've noticed, particularly recently, some aren't considering their their actual impact as streamers, but still, it's not as satisfying, I'll say. It doesn't then mean that I've gave up altogether. I've kept rolling on, as there's no way that I'm just gonna drop. Not until I know that I've felt that I can't do it. If I'm sticking with it, I'm sticking with it. Though, as I said, just important to maintain just sticking with keeping things real anyway. It's still important to at least come clear about what you are. There's not too much I really want to say. Been done really run this system and into the play. But it isn't easy to comprehend every single word I say either. It's whatever comes, whatever comes. Sure, I do have other new games I was intending to run. And as you would probably know, I'll stay with some of the tried and true. But run such games at 120 FPS if I can on the Twitch service anyway. Just keep some cycles rolling. Remaining on the importance, feeling, comfortable to the skin you're basically in the same way. We are feeling in tune, of course, of your own content. But doing it regularly isn't easy either. Bare essentials are enough sometimes. Still emphasize the high quality above all else, but that's not to say I could do it every single time either. No streamer's perfect, and that's reality. It's not some joke up created from some amateur. I'm just speaking it as a a 10+ year veteran. And sometimes you need to expect the unexpected in some of these projects. It's the way it does sometimes go. But just be prepared. There is basically not much else I want to add. I won't close the broadcast yet. The core matter to address relates, as I said before, no, from a little while back, excuse me, to survive this year, or at least in enduring for quite a long time, though. Half of this year is almost past, though I'm aware about some of the governments which won't do much. And there's other baths of such extreme, for example, pornography and extremism that exist. On some of those social media sites. And next, not long after I'm done talking, where there is a greater emphasis to organs and the human body, right? So wouldn't be taking any BS. When I see enough, I see enough. It was going to happen no matter what happens next. Fine, I can perhaps mention. Let's show the keyboard, which I have here. That might be what I might do. You want to see the whole thing? Yeah. Top right corner, okay? Important I do show the back first. The front of the device. Have to turn it on, put lights out. PC still on, in the gaming PC. It can be some fun and games though, where you just lay down and just take a look what some characters do. NPCs, basically. To leave it to their devices and stuff. And the two mice. They're both G502X plus mice, by the way. It's what I want to add as well. Normally, well, at least recently, we're using both these mice for the separate PCs. I mean, with using this white mice for the gaming computer. Just for that purpose. The other, with this one for the other computer for many of my other stuff. Which I normally use this mouse, but sometimes batteries go low on these too. Integrated batteries. And I have a spare one. It's one of the Razer ones. Razer Cobra Pro. The secondary mouse. In that, for use, if the other is low battery in whatever case. The actual keyboard on the PC though, and I can't show that, which is one of those wired ones, but it's reliable and all that. Yes. And just show this controller once more. Been through quite heavy use. If you've been there reading of my past content, you know precisely what the controller is, but it's that one for both PC and the PlayStation 4 console. Contrary to other users, where I just can't hold DualShock 4 controllers or DualSense controllers. And if I need to be clear, yeah, I just can't. Still something of the grip of Xbox, Universal Controller, and before the, Xbox One controller, but it was known before, if I remember correctly. There's not really much to show after that. I'll just let that disappear like that. Yeah. There's nothing much really than that. But the times I'm awake isn't exactly consistent, and that's a fact as well. This is done here and after 4 o'clock. And I mean 4 a.m. in the morning, 5 a.m. JST. That's really it. No point to go further, but just getting off. Broadcast is over. Just use a timer and just fade out. This little fan here, stay with us. There's no way I'm gonna drop any form of any lie. Doors closed.